you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed, make sure and click the subscribe button, like, comment, let us know what you think about the episode. If there's a particular guest or topic that you'd like to hear about, we're always checking your feedback on there and love to be able to get your suggestions on to future episodes. Today I'm going to be chatting with Kyle from Hot Shot Secrets, and we're going to be talking about something that's common this time of year, which is fuel gelling up, and specifically a way that we can get the truck back up and running if we encounter that where it won't start. We've had a cold snap, something like that. So we're going to jump into that topic, and then also how to prevent it as we head into winter. So I'm looking forward to chatting with him today. Before we get to it, I want to give a shout out to one of our sponsors that helps make the Diesel podcast possible. Kershaw Knives has a discount code that gets you up to 40% off. If you go to Kershaw.kaiusa.com, use code 40TDP2024, get you up to 40% off MSRP. We've got a ton of different choices if you're in the market for an EDC knife or something for fishing, hunting, around the job site, around the house. They've got different choices for blade steel, blade shape, different opening mechanisms, different handle designs, and their whole lineup's designed to meet any budget. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure head on over to their website, use code 40TDP2024 to get up to 40% off MSRP. All right, let's get to today's podcast with Kyle from Hot Shot Secrets and talking about fuel gelling up and ways that we can get the truck started, up and running in an emergency. Kyle, welcome to the Diesel Podcast. How you been?
Good, Patrick. Glad to be back on with you.
Yeah, I saw some, I think you did an episode or a show with Stacy David recently. I think I saw a post on Facebook. He was like my hero when I was younger watching trucks on Spike TV. I would always do that. It was I think that's one of the things that got me into trucks, was watching him do all the different things that he would do way back in the day. So I'm a big fan of him and saw you guys were on there. So that was really cool.
Yeah, we love Stacy. He's a great partner of ours, and yeah, I'm the same way, man. I grew up watching him, and he's one of the real guys too. Like, it's as real as it seems, and it's fun going to record with him. We just did one with Fire Punk's Duster and Michael Dalton's new Pro Mod truck, and it's cool to go down there and see him, and you actually get to see all of his builds that you've been watching over the years too. So, so very cool.
Oh yeah, oh definitely. There was last time we chatted, it was a really cool discussion we had about kind of old school ways to treat fuel, and we touched on adding transmission fluid and two-stroke oil, and then towards the end of it, we talked a little bit about kerosene for anti-gel. And now that we're into November, almost December, we're kind of in the season of fuel gelling up for the next 3 or 4 months. And
we are. 'Tis the season. Here it comes.
It is. And I think it's a perfect time to talk about what do you do if it happens? Like, not saying being proactive, which hopefully we're proactive with it and we can avoid it. But a lot of times we're just not able to, or it just happens. And so you had a lot of really great points about this topic that I think our audience can really get some value from, and then avoid some issues and, I mean, even fuel system kind of wear and damage that can happen.
Yeah, and you know, it is that 'tis the season. The cold weather's coming, and generally when we see the freeze ups, it generally happens towards the very beginning of the season when someone's not ready, and it's like, oh, I didn't think the cold was coming yet. Or the very end of the season when they're like, oh, winter's gone, spring's here, and then you get that surprise cold snap and kind of gets caught. So yeah, primarily, obviously, we always want to talk about pre-treating your fuel. You know, like our EDT winter defense here, we've talked about a bunch of times, that adds that 7th component of anti-gel to prevent you from gelling up. But it does happen. It can happen. We see last year Texas got hit. I think right now there's some cold weather going through the south, and a lot of the fuel down there is untreated because they don't expect this type of temperature. So it could literally be geographic for you, where you just don't have any type of treated fuel. Sometimes it's bad fuel. If you get bad fuel, it takes away a lot of the properties of an anti-gel, so they may not protect as deep down in the temperature as they can. Water in the fuel causes issues. The water itself can freeze, as opposed to just the fuel gelling. So there's a bunch of ways that it can happen, even for people that are trying to stay on top of it. And I don't wish it upon my worst enemy when you freeze up. And you know, the fuel in the tank can freeze itself. Obviously, we talk a lot about how much wax is in diesel fuel, and that's what's happening. The wax, the paraffins are starting to clump together, and they get caught on that filter, and they basically just clog the filter and choke off your fuel supply line. A lot of these trucks have exposed fuel lines that just the cold temperatures can freeze that fuel in and prevent it going. It's a bad day, dude. It's a bad day when that happens. And what I kind of wanted to chat with you about is let's assume you're there. Let's assume it's that bad winter day and you're frozen. You want to do anything to get moving again, but there's safe ways to do it, and then there's unsafe ways to do it where you're already putting a lot of strain on the system. Like I said, it's going to be the coldest start that truck's ever had, just trying to get the fuel flowing again. So let's not compound the issue and add more problems to the equation. So yeah, I wanted to kind of chat today about unfreezing the frozen and how to do it best.
Yeah, and when I think of freezing fuel, I think of water. But that's not the only thing that can cause the issue when you get those temperatures below zero, correct?
Absolutely. It's more so the wax. The water is an issue. Obviously, we want to keep the water out of the fuel. Using a good fuel additive with a good water demulsifier, dispersant that helps separate the water, helps your diesel truck assist that water separator to keep it out of the fuel in the first place is a good thing to do. As we've seen a lot, and we've talked in the past a little bit about the bio, the more bio we're seeing in the fuel, that's just a natural sponge for moisture. So it's just attracting. So we're seeing more water issues nowadays than we've have in the past, and we attribute a lot to the bio in the fuel that's attracting that water. So that's a problem when it's warm or cold. When it gets cold and it gets below zero, a lot of people don't think about the water side, and it can freeze as well if you have water in the fuel system. But generally, what you see is the wax in the diesel fuel that starts to clump up and gel up and cause you problems on passing fuel through the system. But both of them are something that need to be addressed.
So what would I do if I go to start one cold morning and it's just not cranking over, and I need to get it going. I got to get to work. I got jobs to be at or something like that. What should I do?
First, cry, because it's going to be a bad day. But you're going to crank over. As long as you got power, that's going to be the thing. It's going to crank, and you're going to realize it's just not getting any fuel. And then you got to kind of diagnose where your problem is and how to treat it. Now, one option is to call your AAA, call a tow truck, get it towed into a shop. Generally speaking, heat fixes all. When this gets back up to temperature, you're good to go. The fuel will start flowing again. So the easiest but most expensive way is to get towed into a shop, and they generally bring them in there and they let them thaw out. They bring them up to room temperature, and the fuel starts flowing again. But you're going to have a tow bill, and you're going to have a long time, and you're going to have whatever you plan for that day is not going to happen. So that's your option one. Your option two is using a rescue product. Our product is called Diesel Winter Rescue, and I always encourage everybody. It's a very cheap product. Doesn't cost much. It's a good thing. I always tell people you should always have a bottle of this. If you own a diesel, have a bottle in your trunk, in your toolbox, somewhere. Hope you never need it. And if you never have to use it, that's a good thing. But you will be so grateful if you have it when you need it. And the funny thing is, I always keep a couple bottles in the Hotshot Secret truck that I drive, which is a 2020 Ram 6.7 Cummins. I've never gelled because I constantly treat our fuel with our products, our anti-gel. But I go through the bottles usually every winter. I go through a few bottles because I see people gelled and I help them out, So when you see people stranded or something like that, you can be a hero to someone if you got one of these in your bed of your truck or in your door or something. So keep a bottle of this stuff on hand. Hope you don't need it. Maybe help somebody else out. Certainly, if you need it, you're going to be very grateful you have it. Now, how it's used are a couple different ways. We recommend A quart bottle this size, is something that we'd use on like a light duty truck. So a lot of the time you can get, if your truck was sitting, let's say, and it gelled overnight and you really haven't had the fuel flown very much, most of the time you really kind of have a tank that's full of gelled fuel and it hasn't tried to really suck through the filter yet to really clog up the filter. That'd be good news. And you can pour half a bottle into the fuel tank, let it do its magic, and it will, what it's doing is it's returning those wax particles that have frozen up and clumped together back into solution, into the fuel. So in layman's terms, melting it. Lab hates when I use that term, but it's not really melting it, but it's a chemical reaction that returns the wax, just like we do on the reverse side when we're using wax modifiers to prevent it from clumping and gelling together. We're reversing the process basically and returning it back to a liquid. So a good day is you pour half the bottle in your fuel tank. It returns all that fuel back to a liquid form to allow it to pass through the system, get the truck fuel, and start running again. Once that truck's running, most of the trucks, depending on your make, model, year, and stuff, have fuel returns. So you're getting a hot fuel return, and everything's going to start cycling. So once you kind of get it flowing, you're going to be good. If pouring it in the tank thaws out the fuel in the tank, but we're still not getting fuel delivery to the rail, that means you have a downstream freeze point somewhere. Generally speaking, it's usually the smallest lines that are exposed, or most commonly, the fuel filter got clogged up with gelatin. We can show you some nasty pictures of clogged fuel filters. It just looks like they're covered with snot, and it seals them off from allowing any fuel to flow through. So if you're in that situation, this is where it's a bad day regardless. So what the best recommendation, half a bottle in the tank, and then you remove your fuel filter and you fill up the fuel filter. We recommend like a 50-50 mix of diesel fuel and the rescue product. And you literally pour that right in the fuel filter. I've seen people even soak it in soak their filter in it and install it back in the vehicle, fire it up, and that's going to free up that filter. And once it gets a little pathway in the filter and the fuel starts flowing, it'll naturally start to clean all that out and get you a full flow of fuel back to the engine.
I think well, I've only had it happen to me one time, and I didn't have anything to use on hand, and a friend did. My next question that I asked him was, how long is this going to take? Because I think I had to get to work or something. How long does it take the product to get just to start working? What should somebody plan on if this happens to them? Say they listen to this episode, they pick up a bottle, it's in the truck. What kind of time frame are we looking at?
It really all depends. It depends how the ambient temperature, how cold it is outside. It depends how much is gelled, how long it's been sitting out there, and is it a big giant ice block you're dealing with, or is it a couple ice cubes right at the funnel of the fuel flow? So it's really relative. Also depends how much fuel's in the tank. If you have less fuel in the tank, there's less to get through to dethaw. So you're kind of better off. We always like to advise people to keep your tanks as full as possible. It's at the lower point where bad stuff happens, but when you have less fuel in there, it's less fuel to degel too. So it'll actually, work quicker if you have less fuel. So there's a few different factors involved, but generally speaking, I've seen it work as quick as minutes, like literally a couple minutes, and you can get fuel flowing again, up to an hour or two to get everything really through the system. If you've got to go through the filter, like that second step I told you, that's going to add some time, because if anybody's ever changed their own fuel filters, depending on the vehicle, some are pain in the butt and some are pretty easy to get to, but it's also messy too. And you're probably somewhere freezing cold trying to do it in the driveway or the side of the road and pulling the fuel filter off. It's just not a fun job. And that's why I say, I think this is where this kind of develops into one of those things where when you're in that situation, you just want to get your truck running again, and it's like, I will do anything to get this running. It's later that you regret going with some gangster ways of doing that. And you're like, man, Probably shouldn't have poured kerosene in there. It got me going again after a little bit, but I'm someone who religiously puts lubricity in my fuel and brings the cetane up, and I regret doing that one time because, as I said, that startup's the worst startup that truck's ever going to see, and you can make it easier or better on that situation for that truck. So, if you got to go through the whole fuel filter thing, that's probably going to add some time to your dethaw as well.
Well, on our last conversation, we went into some really, really good details about ways that kind of old school ways people would treat fuel through lubricity. And then you had touched on the anti-gel with kerosene. And one of the big takeaways from that was wear and how well is the fuel lubricated. And I think with this, it would be huge. I guess depending what you use, what product is out there, is, say the truck, you get it up and running, you had half tank, 3/4 of a tank, the cold snap ends, and you're just going to keep, driving until you got to, fuel up again. What can happen when you treat fuel? You get it ungelled. What happens to the lubricity? I guess it would depend what you used, to ungel it, whether it was, product off the shelf or something like that.
Well, good question. And again, we're potentially attacking two different issues where with the gelled fuel, the wax in it, and the frozen water that could potentially be in it. One of the unique things is, like, let's address the water because that's kind of like easier. We'll dive a little deeper into the gelling and the lubricity side of it. But we use a chemical called DPM. It's an expensive chemical. And this is to treat the water when you're in this type of situation. Most of the industry uses a chemical called EB that's very commonly used. The difference being is what we're doing is we're lowering the point at which water freezes. So let's say you gelled up, you got that thing going, and maybe you're somewhere there where you can't go and put some fresh fuel in and treat it and everything, and you got to ride out on that tank that you just degelled. Well, any type of water in that tank, if it was already cold enough to freeze the water, it potentially could freeze right back again, next time you stop, next time, without getting that water treated. So the chemical, the de-icer that we use in our diesel winter rescue actually lowers the freezing point of the water considerably against other competitors on the market. And this is a small space. Power Service 911 is a very common product. It pretty much owns the market. And and House has a product, Lifeline as well. So we all have these like Lifeline, rescue product type of things. Those other products that use the EB formula, once you're back to a liquid form, that water still can freeze at a higher temperature. We're adding an extra layer of protection that once you get going, we're dropping the freeze point of that water considerably to help you get to the next destination, the next spot, so this problem doesn't compound on itself. Like I said, you're already screwed, don't screw yourself worse. Let's get this completely fixed. And we have some really cool testing. I'll share a picture with you that we have from the lab. And what we did was we took some diesel fuel and we added 5% water. So we added 5% of the capacity of this diesel fuel was water. And then we treated that with these common three products, our diesel winter rescue, the Power Service 911, and the House Lifeline. And then we bring it down to, you get to see my notes here, negative 22 degrees at Fahrenheit. So at a very cold temperature like that, and what you'll see is the fuel actually sits on top of the water. The water is at the bottom, and the water, although the fuel is now degelled, the water with our DPM formula remains in liquid form. So your water separator can still get it out. You can still flow your fuel. Whereas using like an EB formula does not bring the freeze point of the water down low enough. And as you can see in the picture, the bottom is actually still frozen solid of ice, even though the diesel fuel has degelled. And that ice can clog up the filter and just return the problem that you just escaped from all over again before you can even, get somewhere to put fresh fuel in and get everything, up and running again. So it's really important to look at how de-icers work and the components that are in them to not compound your problem.
Common question we get from you guys a lot is, hey, I need a diesel engine. I either, I can't wait this long to get one, or normal place I get stuff from it just takes too long, or they don't have the parts in it that I need. Maybe my truck's not stock, or I tow heavy with it. I don't want to go back with just a stock engine. DFC Diesel is a sponsor of the podcast. We worked with them, hand in hand on doing episodes, answering technical questions. They have a complete lineup of Cummins, Duramax, and Power Stroke remanufactured engines that are set to a standard of ISO 9001 2015 standards, which is a huge deal in the aftermarket. And there's certain levels of quality testing, validation that are required for that. So when you get one of those engines, the type of quality that's built behind it with an industry-leading warranty that's really comprehensive. And the other thing with that is, sometimes the options that are out there, it's a basic OEM engine. You want a little bit more. You don't want to have the same failure again. So there's a bunch of different series of engines that they have, from core, street, tow haul, and also the Speed of Air series, which we've covered on the podcast before. There's a lot of really cool benefits to it. And if you have questions about that, reach out to them. If you don't know the type of engine that you're looking for, if you go to dfcdiesel.com, there's a ton of info there. You can send an email or you can reach out to them. Also, they're working with Speed of Air pistons, which it's the only piston that pays for itself. And there's a lot of really cool technology behind it. So you can add that into your build and be able to get better fuel economy, increase power, increase torque, and better engine life out of it. Some of the most common engine applications or series of engines that they have with that lead time, a lot of them are in stock or they have really short lead times. So you can check your favorite retailer or go to dfcdiesel.com, check them out, see what's in stock, see what you can get. If you have questions, maybe you want to do something that's outside of the normal series of engines, they have tons of choices for rods, cranks, pistons, valve train upgrades, tons of different things. So if you're in the market, definitely make sure and head on over and check them out. I think when I think of kind of that emergency use product, it's almost taking it a step further in the sense of, I think traditionally when we think of this issue, it's, okay, how do I make sure the truck runs? I get to work, I get to the job site. It worked great. But there's other issues that, like you just mentioned, that can still kind of plague the system that, when cold snaps happen, at least where I live, they're more than a day. They can last 4, 5, 7 days where you're hovering around 0 degrees. And I don't want to consistently deal with that every single morning or every couple days, while I have that cold snap. So I think more of a forward thinking or a longer term, sort of solution would really separate for me, what I would want to do, how I want to fix the issue.
Right, and we try to think of that when we formulate products. We laugh a lot about. I give our lab guys a hard time, our nerds over there, because they're very scientific. So they're always looking deep inside these formulations and the performance of the products and how they interact with the fuel. Sometimes we've got to remind them about the consumer use. Well, think of the user, think about the guy that's in this situation. What can we also do to help them? That goes back to the water formula I just talked about. Initially, the job is to ungel, let's get this flowing again. Well, we want to forward think through that and say, well, not only do we want to get this going again, we want to make sure that water then doesn't freeze up. So we use a really high-end de-icer, so it kind of extends the coverage during that bad time. And I'll take this to the next level. That's also the time we still want to be doing the things that you and I have talked about a million times. And the most important thing is lubricity. And this is where this market has really struggled at, in that you get caught in this really bad day where you're frozen and you just want to get it going. But it's really important, especially when the system's strained like that. This is the time to go back to the stuff that we always talk about. Make sure you're bringing a lot of lubricity in there. And sure enough, we've had a lot of talks about CP4 pumps. And, if you're running a CP4 and trying to protect it, but you freeze up and you go with some of these other products or ways of trying to degel, you now have sent some really dry fuel to that pump at its worst time that it's ever experienced everything, when it's just straining for fuel. And so I know you love data, so we actually ran some wear scar testing on what we did is we took a baseline fuel, and then we treated a 50-50 blend, kind of like I told you how we pour into the fuel filter. And we did a 50-50 mixture with, first of all, we tried, I told them to throw kerosene in there because we talked about it last time as kind of a gangster way of preventing the gelling. Well, we want to throw the kerosene in as well just to see where it came up on the wear scar test. And then we also tested our diesel winter rescue product and the Power Service 911 and the House Lifeline, and wanted to look at, okay, now you're stuck. We're going to treat the fuel to get you going, but what's that fuel look like running through the system at that most critical time of initial startup to get you back on the road? And I can share some of these results with you, and we can send them over too, so you can post them later if you'd like. But and we've talked about wear scars, right? So we know what a wear scar is now. This is a way to measure fuel lubricity, and it is a little ball that is put down with lubricant on it that's moved at a certain time period for a certain pressure, and then they measure how much of the metal is gouged out of the ball, and that's measured in microns. So the more pore the lubricant is, the more you're going to have friction and grinding out more and have a larger gaping hole in it, if you will. The better the lubricity, the less friction you have and the less wear scar you have on it. So it's a wear scar test to measure the fuel lubricity. And we've got a printout of these for each one of the tests that shows the measurement of the wear scar. So you want me to go through the numbers? You like your numbers, right?
Oh, I do.
I do. So this time we started with a baseline fuel tested at a 500 micron wear scar. Now, you and I have talked about what's good fuel, right? Do you remember the numbers? Where's the safe zone?
Oh, I don't remember off the top of my head the number. You got me.
All right, 460 is what we're always shooting for. The American standard is 520, and that's why we can have dry fuel here. The European standard is a 460. They want a smaller wear scar, a fuel that has more lubricity in it. The American Engine Manufacturers Association also agrees with Europe that we need to be at a 460. Unfortunately, here in the United States, at the pump, it can be as high as 520. So we're at the higher end of a drier fuel here. This 500 micron fuel is legal. It's something that you can get at the pump today. And that's why we recommend adding lubricity to your fuel, because we want to get that down under a 460. And the lower you get, the better. That's the less wear. So we started at 500 for this test. And as you can see, the first one, we did a 50-50 treatment with the Power Service 911, which is their rescue product for once you're frozen. And that moved the wear scar from 500 microns to 550 microns. And as we share this, you might be able to see the blue line here. The blue line actually shows the coefficient of friction. It's measuring the amount of friction, and that friction is actually what causes the wear. So the more friction you have, the bigger the wear scar. So the coefficient of friction on the test result was a 0.240, and at 500 microns, well, the Power Source 911 moved that up to 550 microns with a 0.245. So the coefficient of friction also went up. It went up 2%. The wear went up 9%. The next one we tested was the House Lifeline. And again, this was the same base fuel with the 50-50 blend of the rescue product. And the House Lifeline went from a 500 wear scar to a 670 micron wear scar. So 25% difference in lubricity that it lost. The coefficient of friction went from a 0.240 all the way to a 0.371. So a 35% difference in friction on that. And these are to scale too, these images. So you can probably quickly see, I don't know how well you can see today, but we can share this with you. It's a very large wear scar. So And as you know, a 670 micron fuel, yeah, that's dry. That's something your CP4 does not want to see. Again, especially after it's struggling, from being frozen. So we also threw the kerosene in there to see what we find. And again, test fuel was 500. The kerosene moved the wear scar to 640. Believe it or not, the Howe's Lifeline dried it out more than the kerosene did, but the kerosene still is considerably bad at a 640 micron wear scar. Moved the coefficient of friction from 0.24 up to a 0.30. So again, more friction, more wear at the most critical time of a cold startup after being frozen. The diesel winter rescue product that we make, again, we can get you unfrozen like the other ones, but we want to do it and also lubricate the system and protect the system during that tough time. So our diesel winter rescue test, same test, 500 micron base fuel, 50-50 blend with the product. The wear scar went from a 500 micron wear scar to a 320 micron wear scar. So now we got some very lubricated fuel. The coefficient of friction went from 0.24 down to 0.164. So we had a 36% difference in lubricity wear scar and a 31% reduction in friction as well. So while it's doing everything to ungel the fuel, de-ice any ice in there, get everything flowing again, we also reduce your wear scar down to a 320, which is an incredible number. That's a very high lubricity fuel that's protecting all your fuel components, and especially during this rough time when it's coming back from the dead, if you will.
Yeah, well, and especially if you got to keep on driving the truck and you're not able to, or you have a tank that's 3/4 or almost full, and you got to keep driving it. And especially like with the CB4 discussions that we've had in newer diesel trucks is how important lubricity is. So I think of being in this emergency situation, needing to get the truck to, start and run, and then limiting the wear. If I can do that, I'd want to do it.
Yeah, you nailed it. The example you gave of being somewhere with the tank fuel and having to use one of these products, which we hope you never have to, but if you do, well, now you've got some choices out there, and there's if you dry out that fuel, you're now dealing with something you didn't even want to start with in the first place. And this goes to the people out there that do use a fuel additive and do add lubricity, like the ones that we like that are doing it right, that to protect these fuel systems. If that person gets put in a tough situation where they're actually gelled up for some reason, kerosene, a couple of these other products in the market, as you can see here, really dry out the fuel, and now you're stuck with a tank in a very cold climate that you don't want to shut off because you don't want it to you want to get somewhere safe and get it all good again. And there's a better way to do it. Like I tell you, we're not the cheapest product out there, but we don't let our lab get involved in pricing and chemical formulations on what's worth this and that. We want to make the best product, make it easy for the consumer to use, and protect their system from things that they may not be thinking about. Because when you're stranded, you start to throw things out the window. It's like, I don't care, just get it running again. But we want to make sure during that process, we're also protecting the system and protecting that full tank full past that once you get going, to hopefully it doesn't happen to you again.
Yeah, it's not a good situation. It happens every year where I live. It doesn't get that cold, but there's usually a couple times kind of around now or Christmas, and then February is really cold. For some reason in Colorado, we always get like that Arctic kind of blast that happens, and I have friends that own diesel shops, and a lot of times people do want to do exactly what you said. They call the shop, they bring them inside, but they have limited space, and you can't always get them all in there, and you've got a tow bill, and then you're still stuck with the kind of the issue of, the cold snap's going to last more than a day typically. So what can I do to be proactive with it? And I think it's cool to talk about this because, when we focus on fuel discussions and questions that I see from listeners, a lot of it is about lubricity, or sometimes they'll touch on cetane and getting that higher. But once we get into winter, a lot of shop owners I know, the calls jump up for I've gelled up. Or questions from listeners. What do I do? I see that we're supposed to be, at 5 degrees for a couple days. What's the best way to do it? And I think traditionally it was just go to your local auto parts store. There's something on the shelf. You grab it, you keep it with you. And I've never thought farther ahead and thought, okay, well, what does it do? How much is it drying it out? What am I going to do after I get it started? I never thought about it till you had mentioned some of the things you did during our chat today.
Well, and again, I hope we can educate some people on that. If you're in this situation, there's some safe ways to do it. But first and foremost, let's not get there, man. Like, let's treat our fuel ahead of time. It's a good time to mention that. When diesel fuel has gotten to the cloud point as a measurement, it's actually a visual cloudiness in the fuel. That's when the paraffins are starting to they're like a snowflake. You can actually start seeing them grow and start connecting to each other. At that point, you really lose a lot of the capabilities of an anti-gel. So if you're someone who just gelled up and you got out of jail on it by using a rescue product or something, and it hasn't returned up to above, ambient temperatures above freezing, it's still difficult to treat fuel. So treat it ahead of time. If you see a cold spell coming, treat your fuel ahead of time. Once you dip below that cloud point, you really start to lose some of the capabilities and we've got the strongest anti-gel on the market. I mean, this is fuel line freeze ups down to -45, -65 degree pour point, like very, very high performance, protect you to very deep, deep cold, but you got to treat it before it gets cold. So, I hope people can be on the proactive side. And you're right, as you mentioned, there's a lot of talk about cetane, injector cleaners, that type of stuff. We find in the additive world, there's a lot of people that don't care about any of that stuff. They don't use anything, as much as we've talked about the benefits of it. But when it comes to winter, they're like, I do use an anti-gel. It's like the one thing they do, and it's because they don't want to have this type of problem. So I encourage people, make sure you're treating your fuel. And treat it early. If you see a cold spell coming, make sure you have it in the tank. It's circulated with the fuel. It'll protect you so you don't have to use a rescue product. But you should still grab some, throw it in the trunk, throw it in the bed of the truck, help a neighbor out if they're having a bad time, and hope you never have to use it.
I like to be proactive. So if I was listening to this podcast myself, I would think, well, Kyle in the beginning mentioned that he drives a 2020 6.7 Cummins and he's never gelled up. Like, ask him, what does he use to prevent that? So how do you prevent it? What do you do?
EDT, winter defense. Yeah, so, our main fuel additives, Diesel Extreme and EDT, Everyday Diesel Treatment, they have the same 6 components: injector cleaner, lubricity additive, cetane booster, water demulsifier, rust inhibitor, and a fuel stabilizer. Well, we make a winter version of the EDT called EDT plus Winter Defense, and we add that 7th component, which is the anti-gel. So usually for me, when October hits, and I'm in Ohio, it hasn't gotten that cold yet, but when I hit October, I just change. I just change over to every fill-up. I start using EDT Winter Defense, and I use it pretty much through like March. And so even once it started to warm up a little bit, I still keep it in the tank. We've talked a couple times about cost per treat, and it's one of the good things about our products is we don't add any fillers, so it's a really, you get a lot of bang for your buck. A quart bottle like this treats 400 gallons, of fuel, so it's cost effective to use in every single tank. I just make that switch in October, and I ride it out until we're pretty much in April, and I just know there's no more freeze coming, and then I switch back to the normal EDT everyday treatment, and never gelled, never had a problem, and taking the truck into some really cold climates. Have done some southern to northern driving, which we've talked about. Sometimes you might be thinking well, but you're heading into a cold climate, but you're leaving a warm climate that didn't have treated fuel, and you get caught up in that. So it's important to treat early, be proactive about it. I know you're a big guy on maintenance and proactive. To me, it's just something I just turn the switch in the fall, and I just turn it back off in the springtime, and never had a problem.
Well, I like that there's also a solution if someone isn't proactive with it, or maybe they're in a situation where they're in Texas, and then they have to go to Ohio or Pennsylvania or something in the wintertime, and they just, the fuel they have isn't conditioned for winter. Well, there is this emergency type product that I can use, and I'm also not introducing a whole bunch of dry fuel into the system,
Right.
and it can get me through that kind of period of time until I can get back to my regular maintenance schedule or fuel treatment schedule.
Yep. Like I said, you're screwed. Don't screw yourself worse. Take a breath. Realize you're frozen and you had a bad day and you're going to be late to work or something like that. But let's not sacrifice the fuel system. They're too expensive and they're too finicky. It's going to be a bad day for your fuel system. Let's do it as gentle and safely as possible so we can forget about this day and move on and act like it never happened in the future, and not have future wear and premature wear of your fuel components that could be traced back to running some 670 micron wear scar fuel through it that one time when it was starving for fuel and frozen on the side of the road. So let's do it right. Let's do it safe and protect your fuel system.
Well, there's a lot of good info, a lot of topics that I didn't think to ask. I think that's what helps about having a discussion like this, where it's like there's data behind it, there's testing, and then I start to think of situations that either I've been in or people that I know, which I think helps somebody relate it to everyday,
right,
an everyday experience. So that was really cool to learn more about it. One of the things I always like to ask you when we chat, because Hotshot Secrets, yourself, you guys are so involved in the industry, in racing and all these different things. What are, we're wrapping up 2024 here. We're going to be at the end of the year here shortly. And
finally.
Yeah, it's kind of flown by in some ways, in other ways it didn't. But what are some things that either you're looking forward to or the company's looking forward to into 2025, be it with racing, I've been hearing from some of the racers out there, like 2025 is going to have like the highest power numbers, fastest times we've ever seen. We're starting to see, with like turbo technology and other components, like 4,000 horsepower might be the new bar, or maybe even higher, and things are going faster. So what are you looking forward to?
Everything, man. I've been screaming this from the mountaintops for 5 or 6 years now. Just like, get your eyes on this industry and see what they're doing. If you're an automotive person, period, what's going on in the diesel industry is just insane the last few years. And the high performance side, the racing, the polling stuff, the things these guys are doing, finally getting noticed. We are finishing off 24 here with PRI. It's my final event of the year. We always look forward to going to Indianapolis for PRI. We got a lot of our sponsored racers and pollers that are coming by our booth and signing autographs. Got a really cool race truck that is going to be in our booth debuting. It's unveiling, and that's what's happening. We've got a lot of these guys that we're fortunate to have people really push the envelope and be the lab rats that have had to bang their head against the wall to figure out how to move diesel performance to another levels. And we're fortunate to be in an industry where the manufacturers communicate and talk and share information for the benefit of all. And some guys that spend a lot of money breaking stuff and learning along the way. And now that path has kind of been plowed out, where now we're seeing other guys kind of fall in behind now and saying, okay, there's a way to do this. And we're seeing new pro mods being built, just new technology that's coming out that people have learned from others, and we've shared the information. So we're just crushing world records. So, it's just tumbling down on one after another, and it's fun to see. And yeah, 25 is going to be a crazy year where a lot of these planets are aligning, and we've got some really cool stuff coming that I can't tell you. We got some big announcements to make that are coming soon, and what's going on in 25 for us, both on the performance side as well as we're really kind of growing into the big stuff, the class 6 to 8 stuff, the agriculture side. We're just extremely excited about the growth and really proud of the industry of where it's going, and it's getting attention now, and we're ready to show the world what this diesel platform can do in 2025, and I think it's going to be the year to do it.
Yeah, it's exciting to talk about and cover and have discussions with, and it does change a lot and almost all the time. And it's not just with like newer trucks; it's also with the older ones. It's with
Yeah.
performance. It's with towing. It's with hard parts. It's with a lot of the discussions we've had, whether it's about oil, fuel. Like today, we're talking about anti-gel and things like that. So there's so many different sides of it. That's what I love about automotive, but specifically diesel. There's so many components to it that keep my interest that I love to talk about and really learn. And that's what's awesome about chatting with you is I always learn something, and then it comes up in a conversation, and someone's like, "Well, how do you know the cetane level of fuel?" And I'm like, "Well, I just did a podcast with Kyle from Hot Shot Secrets."
That's why we always love tuning in to Diesel Podcast. We love your show. It's always informative, and we appreciate what you do for the industry too. You bring a lot of these minds together. I'd be lying if I didn't tell you that I've watched some of your podcasts before and said, "Wow, I didn't know they were doing that over there." And we reach out to that manufacturer afterwards and say, "Hey, let's talk. I think we can help you with this," and vice versa. We've had you're responsible for a lot of connections. You probably don't know you are, Patrick, but it's great that you bring this platform to allow companies, manufacturers, and individuals to come out and talk about what they're doing in this industry. And it's cool that we all can kind of get together and really advance stuff. So thanks to you for that too.
Awesome. Well, it was great to chat with you today. I look forward to seeing some of those announcements that you mentioned could be coming up here soon. And
Coming soon.
yeah, I know next year I'll see you guys all over racetracks and bringing us. You guys have awesome like live feeds and things that I otherwise wouldn't see. So I appreciate what you guys are doing out there, and look forward to chatting again here soon.
Thanks, Patrick. Always good chatting with you, bud.
Don't forget, Diesel fans, make sure and head on over to kershaw.kaiusa.com. Use code 40TDP 2024 for up to 40% off MSRP. It's a great way to save some money and get some cool gear if you're in the market for a new EDC knife, something for hunting, fishing, around the job site, around the house. They've got you covered with a bunch of different choices for blade steel, blade shape, handle designs, different opening mechanisms, and their whole lineup is designed to meet any budget. So we appreciate them offering that discount code just for Diesel Podcast listeners. So if you're in the market, head to their website, save some money, get some cool gear. Also want to give a shout out to some of our Patreon supporters, Tyler Loewen of 23 Diesel, CUTTERUP Rob, J Cole Robert, all of our other Patreon supporters, all of you who subscribe on YouTube podcast apps, follow us on social media. We appreciate all your support here in year 8 of the Diesel Podcast and look forward to bringing you more of the content that you want to hear in 2024. Till next time, keep the shiny side up.